Good morning, bonjour à tous et tous, and welcome to
Morning.
Canada's 5th annual public meeting. Bienvenue à la 5e Assemblée publique annuelle.
Welcome to PPP Canada's 5th annual public meeting.
I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Organizational Development at PPP Canada, and I will be your MC for today's meeting. With me today is our Chair of the Board of Directors, Mr. Tony Comper, as well as our CEO, Mr. John McBride, both of whom will be speaking to you today to report out on PPP Canada's 2014-15 annual report. Before we begin, I'd like to address a few housekeeping items. First off, this is a live webcast and simultaneous translation is available should you choose to follow us in French or in English. If you are having difficulties with this function, please click on the technical support button. Tout d'abord, cette session
First, this is a live webcast, and simultaneous translation is available should you wish to follow the meeting in English or in French. If you are having difficulties with this function, please click on the technical support button.
Those of you who are joining us online for the first time, should any of you wish to review copies of our 2014-15 annual report, they are available through our website under the Transparency and Accountability tab at the top of the screen. A question and answer period will follow after our speakers have finished their presentations. And finally, a reminder that a recorded version of this webcast will be available on our website shortly after the meeting has ended. Before I turn things over to our speakers, I'd like to take this opportunity to showcase PPP Canada's recent video, which highlights the benefits of the P3 model. Nous sommes plutôt fiers de cette vidéo qui démontre comment le modèle.
We are rather proud of this video because PPP brings important benefits to all Canadians. We hope you'll appreciate it.
Welcome to Vancouver. My name is Shane Ramsey. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for BC Housing. Right now, we're sitting in the middle of the Orange Hall. It's one of the 13 single-room occupancy hotels that we did under this unique P3 arrangement. These are old hotels. They're about 100 years old, and many were in absolute disrepair. In fact, if they hadn't been repaired under the P3, much of this important housing stock in Vancouver would have been lost.
My name is Dorian Wanzura. I'm the General Manager of Transportation of the City of Edmonton. Our P3 project is the $1.8 billion Valley Line Southeast Extension. It's a 13-kilometer LRT line. We have great expectations for on-time performance and best value for the community.
My name is Michael Fougere. I'm Mayor of the City of Regina, and our P3 project for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade was essential for the growth of our community. It has saved taxpayers millions of dollars, and it's a great value to us.
I'm Mayor Jeff Lehman. I'm the Mayor of the City of Barrie, and I'm the Chair of Ontario's Big City Mayors Caucus. Here in Barrie, we are undertaking a public-private partnership, PPP, for a new bus operations facility and an operating contract. And we bundled those two things together, which was fairly innovative to begin with as an idea. And we really feel this model is going to deliver a much improved service for our residents.
The innovation in this P3, I think, has a number of elements. First is involvement of the private sector in a non-typical P3 project, fixing up 13 100-year-old buildings that were fully occupied with folks who are quite vulnerable, really had never been tried before. And what the private sector was able to do was to cut the time that we expected these renovations to take almost in half, from 5 or 6 years down to 3.
When we did our due diligence, we looked at the P3 model. It was going to give us the best value overall with a 3 to 10% savings over traditional methods. On a $2 billion construction and a 30-year operating, that's significant savings.
We are saving $43 million on the construction cost alone, and over the 30-year contract, we're saving about $240 million. This is a remarkable savings, and the public understands that and is very, very supportive. There could be no other way on a more generic construction that we would have those kind of savings. It would not be possible.
When I looked at the business case for this, I said not only are we transferring risk, not only are we leveraging innovation and expertise, but we're actually seeing a new kind of operating contract with savings built in right on that level.
The support we get from PPP Canada appears all the way through the project, from planning, from screening. They're with us through the value for money assessments and really helping us get our heads around what we need to do to be successful.
Across the country, we have an enormous infrastructure challenge. We are going to need a partnership not only with other levels of government, but with the private sector. So these models are allowing municipalities access to capital and, I think most importantly, access to expertise, which simply isn't available through other methods.
The before and after pictures are just amazing. These buildings were decrepit, really terrible places for people to live, and now they are shining examples of what can be achieved through a partnership like a P3 and creating better spaces for folks.
We've been there. We've been homeless, and we went an entire year, quite a few years back, but we went a whole 365 days without a place to live, living in alleyways.
Can you imagine sleeping outside in the winter, in a little hut with a barbecue to keep you warm? To this, and we love our home.
Yes, look at a P3, no question.
Absolutely, I'd recommend this. If the expertise of P3 Canada, if the funding and the model were not available to us, we would not have been able to accomplish this. If this is as successful as we think it is going to be and has been to date, this will be a model for other cities across the country.
The P3 made a lot of sense to us, and the proof is in the pudding. A number of the buildings are coming back to us, and they look fantastic.
Great, thank you. This morning's meeting will begin with remarks from Tony Comper, Chair of PPP Canada's Board of Directors. Mr. Comper was appointed to PPP Canada's Board of Directors on May 14, 2009. He is the former President and CEO of BMO Financial Group and currently serves as Director of a number of corporations, including Spectra Energy Corporation, the Canadian Institute for Advanced Research, and the Canadian Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Centre for Holocaust Studies. His past experience includes serving as the chair of the University of Toronto's Governing Council and chair of the C.D. Howe Institute. Mr. Comper has degrees from Mount St. Vincent University, the University of New Brunswick, and Haifa University, as well as an honorary law degree from the University of Toronto. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our chair, Mr. Tony Comper.
Thanks very much, and good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous.
Hello, everyone.
Comper, and as was mentioned, I'm chair of PPP Canada's Board of Directors. On behalf of the Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome you to today's meeting and to thank you for your ongoing interest in PPP Canada. The corporation has come a long way since our inception, and I look forward to sharing some of our most recent accomplishments with you today. Dans le cadre de l'Assemblée publique,
As part of this APM, I would now like to share with you the results as can be found in our annual report 2014-2015. The report was tabled in Parliament on July 22nd, 2015, and is available on our website. I'd like to take the next several minutes to review PPP Canada's purpose, priorities, and governance, and discuss our commitment to corporate excellence.
public infrastructure ages and the need for replacement and new infrastructure increases. Governments at all levels are looking for ways of stretching their infrastructure dollars further. Public-private partnerships, we use the acronym P3s, are increasingly recognized as a solution to the challenges of improving Canada's public infrastructure projects. P3s also provide greater opportunities for innovation in public infrastructure, delivering greater value for taxpayer dollars. Recognizing the growing interest and value in the Government of Canada, saw an opportunity to leverage its role to facilitate the consideration of P3s through the creation of PPP Canada. This is a federal Crown corporation. In 2008, PPP Canada was established to spearhead federal P3 efforts in public infrastructure delivery by acting as a source of expertise on P3 matters. As the lead on the federal government's P3 agenda, PPP Canada works with all levels of government to build and deliver expertise and to leverage incentives to broaden the effective of the P3 model. PPP Canada's mandate is to improve the delivery of public infrastructure by achieving better value, timeliness, and accountability to taxpayers. Through P3s, PPP Canada delivers on its mandate through 3 interrelated business lines, which are fully aligned with our corporate objectives. P3 knowledge development and sharing, advancing federal P3s, and advancing provincial, territorial, municipal, and First Nation P3s. And over the past 6 years, the corporation has continued to build on experiences and have strengthened our network of P3 expertise by working with our clients on the development of their P3 projects and connecting with leading practitioners to stay abreast of opportunities in an evolving P3 market. We provide advice in assessing and executing P3 opportunities at the federal level and leverage greater value for money from federal investments in provincial, territorial, municipal, and First Nations infrastructure through the P3 Canada Fund. Board of Directors exercises strong oversight and is committed to the sound stewardship of the corporation. As chair of the Board of Directors, I'm very proud to lead a group of 7 experienced professionals in overseeing the corporation's business. Our Board of Directors is focused on the corporation's ability to be a source of expertise on P3 matters, broadening PPP Canada's engagement in capital projects at the federal level, and working with all levels of government to promote P3s. Board has a notable breadth of knowledge and experience in accounting, auditing, finance, management, P3 contracting and financing, government and policy development, engineering, construction, and the infrastructure sector writ large. PPP Canada's Board of Directors welcomed 2 new members this past year, Ms. Sheila O'Brien and Mr. John Beck. Ms. O'Brien was appointed October 9th, 2014. She's a corporate director and business consultant with over 30 years of experience in the oil and gas, pipeline, and petrochemical sectors in Canada, the United States, South America, and Europe. Mr. Beck was appointed on May the 28th, 2015. He has more than 50 years of experience in the construction industry in Canada and internationally. His background includes corporate leadership in numerous construction activities and the development of public-private partnerships. In keeping with modern government's arrangements for Crown corporations, the Board of Directors has established committees to support the Board in its work. The work of the Board is managed by 3 subcommittees: an Audit Committee chaired by Bill McMacken, an Investment Committee by Ms. Carol Pennycook, and Governance and Human Resources Committee, which I chair. I'd like to quickly provide you with an overview of the work we have done over the past year, starting with the Audit Committee. Audit Committee enforces the corporation's standards for behavior and integrity, oversees reporting of financial information, guides corporate financial planning, and monitors internal control systems. In addition, the committee reviews the qualifications, independence, and performance of the corporation's external auditors and oversees PPP Canada's risk management plan. I'd like to take a moment to highlight the Office of the Auditor General Special Examination. All federal Crown corporations are subject to a special examination once every 10 years. PPP Canada's special examination was conducted in accordance with the standards for assurance engagements set out by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada. The process took several months and involved reviewing documents and interviewing members of the Board of Directors, senior management, employees of the corporation, and stakeholders. Samples of the P3 Canada Fund projects at different stages of completion were also reviewed. And I'm very happy to report that the findings of the Special Examination Committee were very positive. To quote the report, during the period covered by the examination, there were no significant deficiencies in PPP Canada's systems and procedures and practices that we selected for examination. PPP Canada Inc., and that's the corporation, has maintained these systems and practices in a manner that provides it with reasonable assurance that its assets are safeguarded and controlled, its resources are managed economically and efficiently, and its operations are carried out effectively. Investment Committee. Investment Committee is the committee through which we review and make recommendations on P3 projects. The business of the corporation, the committee's primary responsibilities are to review management recommendations on potential federal P3 projects, review project screening and investment recommendations of the projects submitted under the P3 Canada Fund, and provide due diligence on P3 Canada Fund allocation and investments. The committee which I chair, the Governance and Human Resources Committee, is responsible for the implementation of effective corporate governance principles and the approval of human resource strategies and policies. In addition, this committee is also responsible for the recommendation of candidates for the board. The chair of the board and the CEO of the corporation to the minister. PPP Canada strives to be one of the best managed organizations in the country and has built a solid track record of success during its first 6 years of operation. To date, PPP Canada has continuously received successive unmodified opinions from its auditors. The work of the corporation and the board of directors is subject to the oversight of the Auditor General of Canada. The Auditor General, jointly with the external auditor KPMG, is responsible for expressing an opinion on the financial statements we prepare subsequent to their independent audit. In its review of our 2014-15 financial statements, the Auditor General and KPMG once again found that the financial statements present fairly the financial position of PPP Canada Inc. as at March 31st, 2015. And I'm really proud to report that this is PPP Canada's 6th successive unqualified opinion in its 6-year audit history. Finally, I'd like to conclude my remarks by emphasizing PPP Canada's ongoing commitment to corporate excellence. The corporation continually monitors and reviews its processes through lessons learned and experience gained, enhance the operational efficiency and effectiveness as part of our commitment to build an organization of excellence. The corporation continues to support staff by promoting a culture of respect and integrity, a commitment to performance, management, and learning development, and implementing best practices in human resources. We remain committed to sound, transparent, risk-based stewardship of PPP Canada's resources. To date, PPP Canada has received successive unmodified opinions from its auditors. We have established a corporate culture that expects each member of our team to uphold the highest ethical standards and endorse our values of respect for democracy, people, integrity, professional excellence, sound stewardship, and knowledge development. Looking back on 2014-15, I'm quite proud of the work that we have done and of our achievements, and I'm going to ask John McBride, our CEO, to provide you with an overview of the corporation's achievements and strategic direction. Before we do that, though, I just want to say that all of you should, and our clients and our partners, and those of you who are directly involved as partners in everything we do, you should take assurance that we're blessed with a very, very strong management team under John McBride's direction. They manifest all the excellence that I described, and I'm very, very proud of them, immensely proud of them, in fact, and we're going to continue that journey onwards. And over to you, John.
Merci, Tony, et merci à tout le monde.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you all for having joined us electronically. It's a new way for us to share our results with you. Thank you to all of those who have taken the time to join us today and to hear our results as well as our plans for the future.
Talking about who we are and what we do, just to set a context for the results that we can talk about. Our organization is about finding ways to deliver value to taxpayers through the effective use of public-private partnerships. We are experts in delivering this, and we focus our efforts primarily on the public sector. Why is that? In our sort of assessment of what is the needs in the country for public-private partnerships, we see that the primary need is to build greater capacity within the public sector. And so we have focused our efforts on building that capacity within the public sector. We work closely with the private sector, but our efforts are focused on building capacity with the public sector. We do that in three main ways. Fundamentally, we are an organization of expertise. So we act as a source of expertise. We develop it, we share it, and that links closely to our knowledge development business line. We work with the federal government and our partners in the federal government to make sure that P3 is a tool that's available and can be used to implement projects, federal projects. And we work with our partners at the provincial and municipal level to advance the work of P3s. But fundamental to our work is value to taxpayers and expertise. Just a minute on why P3s, because if our whole work is centered around P3s. P3s are a result of looking at what has worked and what hasn't worked in the past. And fundamentally, people need to remember that the private sector delivers all public infrastructure. The question is, how do you best contract with the private sector in order to do that? And in looking back at the experiences of the past, people have identified three main things that P3s try to address. Number one is, how do you handle situations where performance isn't the way that you want it to be? And P3s address that by changing the way that we pay the private sector by paying on performance. So payments are linked to performance. Payments are generally not made until the infrastructure is built, and payments are not made in total until the infrastructure has delivered over its life. By changing the way of the payment mechanisms, you change the balance of incentives and the allocation of risk. You make the private sector take that risk and put their money at risk for delivery. That change in dynamic through the payment mechanism makes significant difference in terms of delivery, quality, and the rest of it, and that's been demonstrated through actual experience. The second thing that P3s do is they think that they incorporate whole life cycle, right? A piece of public infrastructure, it's not about whether it's well designed, whether it's well built, whether it's about the whole life cycle. It's got to deliver over the whole life cycle. And a P3 packages together all elements of the life cycle of a piece of infrastructure so that costs can be optimized over that time frame. And the third aspect of a P3 that is important to remember is it enables innovation. How does it do that? It enables innovation by specifying the output in terms of what you are looking for rather than how the private sector is to achieve it. By giving flexibility to the private sector in terms of how they can achieve it, it brings the best global expertise to bear in doing that. So you get better delivery through payment mechanism, you get better optimization over the whole life cycle, and you get greater innovation. And that can make significant differences in how the public infrastructure is delivered. It is not always the best tool. You need to examine carefully. It works better for large complex projects. It works better when you can clearly partition risks, and where output specifications can be stable over time. But when it does work, it has demonstrated that it can deliver better results to taxpayers. That's what we're about. Canada is a global leader in delivering P3s. We have, particularly since the financial crisis, have shown that we are market leaders. We operate at all levels. The federal government's engaged, provinces are engaged, municipalities are engaged, and we drive our success in terms of global leadership through an unremitting focus on value for money, the fact that the governments across Canada have invested in public sector expertise and leadership through agencies like ourselves, but we have partners in Partnerships BC, Infrastructure Ontario, SAS Builds. Right across the country there is public sector expertise delivered on. We have strong capital markets and we have focused on competition. And the world is turning to Canada and is looking to our experiences, and that is something that I think we don't recognize often enough, that we are in fact global leaders in this field. The Canadian market, as we've sort of talked about in our annual report, there are 34 projects have been sort of brought to market. The growth in the market since our inception in 2009 is impressive. We have been a major part of reshaping the Canadian market by bringing both municipal projects and the municipal market to bear, and the federal projects to bear, but also broadening its application at the provincial level. So we have now managed, in partnership with others, to create a market which is more diversified in terms of sectors and participants, and bigger overall. We're very proud of the achievement that we have and the impact we've had on the Canadian market over the last 5 years. The Canadian pipeline. This is particularly evident in the terms of our own business. As you watch the evolution of our business over the last 5 years. Obviously, at the beginning, we were an organization looking at identifying new P3 projects, but we are now seeing our portfolio of projects crosses all phases of project implementation. We have projects that have reached substantial completion. In the last 18 months, we have had a major focus on projects in procurement, and we work with people right through the procurement phase to make sure that's effective. And we have projects that are in the early stages. But as we've evolved, our project portfolio has evolved, and we are now working across all phases of project implementation. And I can truly say that we're an organization that is operating on all cylinders, on all phases of what it's supposed to do. As we have sort of worked over the last 5 years, we've seen sort of trends. What kind of trends have we seen in the market, right? We've seen trends, as I mentioned, in terms of the types of participants in the market, in terms of the significant growth in the municipal market. We've also seen trends in the types of sectors that are involved. If you went back 5 years, it was primarily health and justice sectors. We have seen an increasing focus on water and wastewater projects. And our view is, and this is starting to show in the market, that the future really sees a significant element of public transit in the future. So, and I wouldn't want to say that the previous sectors of health and those other ones are going away. It's more that they're being supplemented with new sectors. But we are getting into sort of new places and new sectors. We're also sort of seeing a change in the size of projects. When over the last 5 years, the size of the projects in the beginning were what I would call mid-sized projects, those projects in the $300 to $500 million range. We're now seeing a split in the market between those that are relatively smaller, and that's primarily in the area of water, wastewater, that's sort of sub 150 million, and at the other end of the spectrum, like the ones that are the very large, $1 billion plus. And again, that kind of reflects the sectoral split, because water and wastewater tends to be can be at the sort of smaller end, and public transit very much at the larger end. But that we're seeing that evolution. We're seeing that evolution in the market. We're also seeing some efforts to begin to bundle projects together. I mean, that's been a challenge. We've been working on trying to find opportunities to bundle needs together across municipalities or within municipalities to create economies of scale. We're proud of the fact that we worked with the City of Saskatoon to sort of have them bundle 2 bridge projects together as a practical example of ways that they can create scale and deliver these kinds of things. So we are beginning to see changes in the market, and we're also identifying sort of the roles and the ways that we can play in helping to evolve that market. Trying to sort of lead by example. You know, how do we lead by example, and how do we sort of show that we're sort of the best in expertise across the country? So we have been trying to share not only at the project level, but to share our knowledge. As we have evolved over the last 5 years, we have been able to develop knowledge. At the beginning, we learned from others. Over time, we were able to sort of synthesize the best of the best and put that out to others. And we do that. We do outreach activities to share our knowledge. We have developed tools and that people can use, templates. Many of that's available on our website. Many of that we share with clients so that we can begin to develop a body of expertise that people can use as they try to assess whether or not P3s is the right kind of example for that. If you look in our annual report, many of the sort of efforts to share knowledge and the knowledge we develop is captured under our business line that Tony mentioned before, which is knowledge development and sharing. And we're constantly doing that. You know, we have focused on particular sectors that we think are important or that are new to the market. I mentioned the water and wastewater. We have produced a water to wastewater study, how P3s can be applied to that. We see opportunities in the energy to waste sector, so we've spent time investing on that. We have updated our own business guides. So for those who are assessing, you know, is P3 the right implementation tool for us in this project, we've given them a framework that they can use to kind of begin to develop that kind of business case. And we do that through constant sort of stakeholder engagement, whether that be through our counterparts or direct outreach to municipalities or the federal government to share our knowledge. We have organized ourselves more systematically to focus on this knowledge sharing activity, to move beyond our project work, and have made that a more formal part of our business. We have, in fact, changed our own internal governance structure to focus on what we call KDS, or knowledge development sharing, to provide an internal corporate focus to that, because we think it's an important part of our business, in the same way that we had developed a governance structure around our work with provinces and municipalities, and a governance structure around our work with the federal government. And we are systematically developing plans and working with counterparts to identify what our priorities should be, and how do we make those three business lines work together. Where are we at in terms of the federal government? Right? I'm really proud that the federal government is walking the talk of public-private partnerships. It started back in 2011 with a government commitment to review every project over $100 million for P3 potential. That has seeded a significant change in the way the federal government approaches its work. We are now part of the review of all large capital projects. But in the last year, we have been a major player in the development of the replacement for the Champlain Bridge in Montreal. And that project was a complicated project, large-scale project, that was procured in a time frame that most people thought couldn't be procured in, and has produced a result that I'm very proud of. And so now we can say within the federal government, not only are we screening projects, not only are we doing business cases about projects, but we're actually delivering projects, large-scale projects. And this complements sort of projects that have happened before, but this has received recognition sort of within the federal government and outside the federal government. The Champlain Bridge was, in fact, procurement was the winner of the Canadian Council Public-Private Partnerships National Award for Innovation and Excellence. So, the federal government is being recognized as an excellent participant in the P3 market by forums like C2P3. We continue to work with provinces and municipalities and First Nations in advancing their efforts. Our primary tool for that is the P3 Canada Fund. Right? We work with those who, every year we run annual rounds, select, and we work with clients who are interested in trying to use the P3 model to advance their infrastructure needs. In 2014-15, we announced over $400 million of support for projects at the provincial and municipal level. And we are now over $1.3 billion in commitments to over $6 billion of projects at the provincial and municipal level over the last 6 years. Most of those over the last 3 or 4 years. We have worked right across the country. We have worked from Victoria to St. John, from Iqaluit to Regina. We have worked with provinces and municipalities, and we are building a body of project expertise and a body of clients who are beginning to recognize the value of these implementation tools. You all had the benefit of seeing the video earlier, which focused in on 4 of the projects. And I think the main thing I took away from that is, the importance and the value that our clients take from our expertise. And I think that's really heartening. The money's nice, but it's the expertise that's important. And I think that speaks a lot to the type of organization that we're trying to be. And we're starting to see not just projects at the beginning phase, as I mentioned before. We are now seeing projects that are now into operation that are affecting the day-to-day lives of citizens across the country. We have also worked with the New Building Canada Fund to try and find opportunities for P3s. The future of that may evolve, but I do know that there are a significant number of P3s that will be implemented employing funds from the New Building Canada Fund. And we have become a collaborative partner with the New Building Canada Fund to support projects. A recent example of that is our joint support for the Edmonton LRT, where we provided support, but the New Building Canada Fund also provided support. So there is a collaborative approach across federal instruments that can support quality P3 projects across the country. If you take a look at our annual report, you'll see the diversity of projects that we've supported. All right? You'll see the diversity in terms of sectors. All right? Airports, water supply, wastewater treatment, public transit, roads, provincial highways. It's an impressive array and shows that the P3 model can be applied in many circumstances across many sectors. And that's part of what our goal was, to show that its application can be made in many areas. And you'll see, as I mentioned before, the number of clients, all right, from the territory of Nunavut through the smaller towns like Lac-La-Biche, Alberta. And so it is a tool that can be applied in different ways to different people, and we are showing it through actual practical experience. We have this year, we are now in round 7, but in 2014 we ran and operated round 6. We have round 7. We run annual rounds every year and continue to screen in projects, work with clients on projects, people who want to know about our process for the P3 Canada Fund. It is set out on our website in quite a bit of detail. What is the road ahead? My own view is that P3s are a tool in the toolbox. That is recognized by all players at all levels of government, and our ability to support the government in its agenda of providing value to taxpayers and helping to apply that tool in the toolkit. We will continue to be a source of expertise. We will continue our work with the P3 Canada Fund. We will continue to be available for the federal government in the implementation of its own projects. And we stand ready to support the delivery of infrastructure projects in whatever way our expertise can be useful for the government. We also, as Tony highlighted, remain an organization that is committed to excellence. All right? Underpinning all of what we do is an organization and a team that believes in continuous improvement and believes in management excellence. I was heartened by the report of the Auditor General and its special examination, which it does 10 years, and those special examinations are very, very intensive reviews, which I can speak from experience. And it came out and endorsed what I knew to be true, because it's an area that we focused on, that we're an organization that pays a lot of attention to the effective and efficient use of taxpayers' resources, and that we're an organization that's fundamentally committed to value for taxpayers. And in that sense, that kind of focus means the road ahead for us is I believe, a bright one. I'll leave the presentation there, and happy to take people's questions.
Thank you very much, Tony and John, for your remarks. I now would like to open the discussion to questions from our participants. J'aimerais maintenant ouvrir la session aux questions.
And now I would like to open the discussion to questions from our participants. I believe we have a few questions to begin.
Just a reminder that if you would like to ask a question, there is a question box at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Simply type in your question and our moderator will get it to us. And we will make every attempt to answer all of the questions within the time allotted. And maybe as a first question, that I have here, John, you ended on the special exam, and I did see a question for our chair, just around if the chair could share the views of the board on the special exam.
It's something that maybe we understated the significance of this, but it's something that the federal government mandates each one of its subsidiaries and crown corporations to go through at least every 10 years. So we were up to bat this time. And the special examination is not just the usual annual audit that we conduct every year and that goes very well for us, but rather it brings in additional resources and expertise to do a kind of womb-to-tomb investigation of how we're dealing with resources, how we're managing the organization, and we got top marks, actually, not to be too self-serving about it, and that was a major milestone for us. I, frankly, and the rest of the board were not surprised, because we're very close to what happens on a day-to-day basis and through our meetings. But it was a confirmation from the special audit team that we're doing the right thing for the taxpayers, and that's the most important thing of all the things that we do.
Thank you, Tony. Maybe a question, John, you mentioned this in your presentation. We have a question here from David. The Minister of Infrastructure mandate letter gives direction to remove the P3 screen for projects. What impact do you see this having on PPP Canada in short and longer terms? Is this, as some have opined, a signal that P3 projects are no longer favored by the new government and that the role of PPP Canada could be diminished?
I don't interpret it that way, and I just wanted to clarify because a couple of things about what the government has said. It has said that it will be removing, or has removed, the P3 screen for projects submitted to the New Building Canada Fund. It continues to maintain the federal screen, which means that it will continue to review and expect a review of all federal projects over $100 million that are being considered. I think what it speaks to is an important question of, how do you approach and how do you encourage P3s? Do you encourage them through the P3 Canada Fund, right, which is a positive tool, the carrot or stick, and it said, again, it has said nothing about reducing its commitment to the P3 Canada Fund. So it was always a question about how do you promote P3s with other levels of government, and to what extent do you use the positive incentive approach, and to what extent do you use the mandatory top-down approach. And I think what the government is saying is that it favors the positive approach to encouraging and promoting people, rather than the sort of top-down sort of rules from on top. And I think there's still many places for a collaborative, positive approach to work with provinces and municipalities on the development of P3s.
Thank you, John. Another one from one of our participants. Hello, this time last year I asked if you had any intention of increasing the 25% of total CapEx. You said no. What changed?
We're not surprised by the question.
Well, I presume by that question, that the fact that the federal government in the past has said that the P3 Canada Fund was limited to support of 25% of eligible capital costs, and that the previous government announced that it was moving to 33%. When I said last year that do I have any intention of it, it was not something that was within the control of this corporation. It was something that was set as a parameter by our shareholder. I can say, though, it was a reflection of consultations that the federal government had done with many stakeholders. Maybe even the questioner was part of those sort of advocacies, that if it wanted to encourage P3s, why was it supporting P3s at a lower level? So it's not something that we anticipated, because it was an issue that had been available for a long time. But in the context of consultations around other issues, the government heard stakeholders, and the previous government announced its intention to make that change.
Thank you, John. Another one. How many projects are screened in under round 7 for P3 Canada Fund investment?
We screened in 13 projects. A portion of those we've learned when we've kind of taken a look at our portfolio and our pipeline of projects. When we screen them in, there are projects that we are screening in for early development, ones that we think might materialize in the next sort of 12 to 18 months. But we also screen in a portion of projects that have our expectation will take longer to come to fruition, so that portfolio of 13 projects is made up of ones that we expect to come to fruition over the next 12 to 18 months, plus ones that we're continuing to work on to seed a pipeline for the future.
I'd like to make a point here, and the point is that when we say screened in the project, I should point out that not all projects that come our way will qualify as being P3s for a whole series of reasons, all legitimate, but they don't necessarily qualify and don't meet our criteria. So it shouldn't come as anybody's surprise that when P3 projects come forward for consideration, not all of them are going to make the cut because they just don't qualify. They've got to pass certain tests and criteria before they will get screened in as, well, this is potentially a legitimate P3, but we've got to go through the process.
Thanks for highlighting that, Tony. And what we have learned over time is we want to give people early signals about whether or not they should invest more energy. And so we've committed to provide people a first signal within 3 months of their application about whether or not there's even any potential. And when we say screened isn't a decision that we're going to support the project, but it's an indication that we believe that it's worth the effort of trying to continue to develop that project so that we can focus our resources and we can focus the resources of our clients as well.
And in many cases, when we give the signal early days that the way your application has been structured doesn't look like it's going to qualify as a P3, in many cases, they will go back and reconsider the approach they're taking, and it will either make it in that round or it will make it in a subsequent round where they've modified their approach, and therefore it is worthy of being screened in and qualifying, potentially qualifying as a P3.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. Next question. John, the new infrastructure minister has said getting money out the door is a priority. Is a P3 business case, a deeper dive VFM analysis, at odds with this?
Not in my view. That the impediment or the sort of perception that doing the upfront work is in somehow an impediment to implementation. Our experience is that upfront work pays dividends down the line in terms of accelerating project implementation. So yes, there might be more upfront work, right? And there might be more upfront process in terms of a P3. But when you took a look at the whole sort of process, you get to the finish line at the same time, and in fact often faster, but you get to that finish line in a better way. I'll give you a specific example. The procurement process for a P3 includes asking the private sector to design the project. So when you reach a kind of finalization and you sign a contract with the private sector, they begin construction immediately. They have mobilized and they're getting started. In a traditional procurement, while you're getting started, the first contract you put out is just for the design. So, you run a procurement process for design, then you get design results back, then you run a procurement process for the build. Time you get to the end of that two-step process, you often have taken more time than you have if you kind of integrate the parts together.
Thank you. How does PPP Canada work with the Department of Infrastructure and Communities?
We work closely with them. As I mentioned, up to and including being joint contributors to projects. The best example of that is the Edmonton LRT project, where Edmonton submitted to the P3 Canada Fund. We worked with them to develop a business case, and back to the question of, is P3 an impediment to delivery thing? They applied to us in June, and that project was approved in December. Right, so the 6th time frame for a $1.7 billion or $1.5 billion project. The Building Canada Fund is also a contributor, relied on our due diligence to also be a contributor. We worked in collaboration with Infrastructure Canada in contributing to the wastewater treatment solution in Victoria. So we work together. There are close staff connections. They turn to us for expertise on large projects and P3s. We share information. We're often targeting different types of projects and different types of things, but there's constant communication between the two organizations.
Thank you, John. Another question, similar to what you've already answered, but I'll ask it to see if there's anything else you want to add on this one. The new government appears to wish to see projects proceed quickly and to not lapse infrastructure funds, as seemed to have happened over the last few years. Will this approach have a negative impact on the number of P3 projects that can proceed under a tight time frame?
I think no. When you're dealing with large projects, whether it's P3 or not P3, the issues of getting to an approval of that project, work needs to be done up front. Right? There's a significant amount of pre-engineering work, costing work, that is normal due diligence that needs to be done and available in getting projects to the approval phase. When we're working with clients, we can go as fast as they're able, right? In terms of their ability to produce the information that they would need for their own decision-making purposes, let alone for ours. So it'll be interesting as we kind of get further into this. But I think people will discover that this idea that somehow doing it as a P3 is the reason why things go slower. That has not been factually consistent with our experience.
Thank you. The easier one, I think. When will the next round of funding launch?
Traditionally, we have launched our rounds in April and close in June. So I have no reason to believe that established cycle of mid-April to mid-June as the open time for our applications would change in future years.
Great, thank you. John, in light of the new PM's approach to transparency, will these 13 projects be made public? We do not make the public the projects or the applications that we receive from other levels of government. We leave the question of whether or not that other level of government wants to make that information public is a decision that we leave to them. Up to the point where we have not made a decision on whether to provide them any money, the question of their application is something that we treat as part of as confidential. Not that we would in any way resist them telling the world that they've applied, but as a matter of respect to our clients, we leave that decision and the timing of it and whether they want to make it public in their hands. Thank you, John. We are almost at the end of the questions that have been coming in, so maybe just to remind anyone who's viewing, if there is a question you want to ask, now would be the time to submit that using the button on the right hand side of your screen. And maybe just while I wait to make sure none are coming in, are there any final comments that either of you would like to make before we move to the end of this webcast?
I would just say that sometimes thoughts occur to people who are watching the webcast after we've finished. And by all means, we're quite happy to receive questions subsequently. And so just send them in to us if we don't get a chance to address your questions on the webcast. We, by all means, would welcome them to come into P3 Canada. We'll deal with it then.
Thank you. That's exactly right. Tony, John, any?
My one comment would be the recognition I'd give to the many people that have worked with us and have supported the organization. Right? We are, the organization and me personally have been very fortunate to have had super collaboration from my provincial counterparts in procurement agencies, from supporters in the marketplace, at the municipal level, champions that our success is really, a success for a network of people across the country, and that there is a growing network of people that understand and know about P3s, and there's an incredible generosity that happens between them. And I just want to recognize the people that have, across this country, that have supported this work, and people that have championed the cause of P3s.
Thank you, John. I think we may have one more question which has come in. Can you comment on federal P3 projects? Do you see a positive or negative trend?
I see a positive trend. Why do I say that? First of all, the approach to P3s at the federal level has followed a number of phases. The phase before, say, frankly, before our existence, or before at least the establishment of the screen, was examples of people who had championed projects themselves. The project of, say, the CSEC project was a function of an individual champion within the federal government, which was the beginning of something. The establishment of the screen in 2011 was the beginning of a more systematic approach to P3s. And trying to integrate P3s not as a sort of the exception that somebody did, but as a systematic way of thinking about the way people do business. And so, it's taken a while to kind of integrate, subject to 2011, integrating that into the policy framework of the federal government. And now we've had the experience of the Champlain Bridge, a huge project with a huge success, and so people are starting to see it, touch it, they can feel it. So, we've gone from one-offs to a more systematic policy approach to actual people being able to see results. And as people are able to see the results, they're kind of going, hey, this might be something for me. And it kind of keeps a positive feedback along the way. And, I know from my federal colleagues, P3s are part of the vocabulary and part of the way that they're thinking about things in a much more, systematic way than they certainly did 4 or 5 years ago. And I think that'll start to be reflected in the way the federal government does business more and more over time.
Thank you, John. And thank you to both of you for taking the time to share your thoughts and views on the corporation's performance over the last year. As our chair mentioned, if you do have questions that you think about following this webcast, or for those who may see the webcast up on our website and have questions, we do invite you to please submit those questions. You can send them to our general email, which is info@p3canada.ca. We also welcome your feedback and comments on this live webcast, and we will be sending to each of the registered participants today an evaluation form. We ask you to fill those out so that we can respond and always work to improve the way we share this information. And maybe to end, on behalf of the corporation, I would like to thank you for your interest in PPP Canada's activities, as well as the P3 market in Canada. Au nom de la société, merci à chacun et chacune.
On behalf of the corporation, thank each of you for your interest in PPP Canada's activities, as well as the P3 market in Canada.
I know we're running a little bit early. I do not have any more questions, but again, we'll accept those after and get answers out. Thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon.